The $3,000 surveillance drone plummeted from the sky like a wounded bird, its rotors screaming in mechanical agony as it crashed inches from Max's golden retriever. But what Marcus discovered on that memory card would expose a conspiracy that went far deeper than one neighbor's petty revenge. Part 1. Marcus Chen was watering his roses on that sweltering Tuesday afternoon. His golden retriever, Buddy, had been napping peacefully on the sun-warmed deck, tail occasionally twitching at dreamery bats. The sound was subtle at first, like an angry bee trapped in a jar, but it grew louder, more insistent. "What the hell?" Marcus muttered, squinting up at the cloudless sky. The drone hovered 30 feet above his backyard, its black chassis gleaming like a mechanical vulture. 4 rotors kept it stable as it circled his property with predatory precision. Buddy's ears perked up, and he scrambled to his feet with a concerned whimper. The dog had always been sensitive to unusual sounds, a trait that had saved Marcus from more than one break-in attempt during his years as a night shift security guard. The drone dropped lower, now barely 20 feet up. Marcus could make out the camera gimbal beneath its belly, lens focused directly on his patio doors. His blood ran cold. Someone was recording him in his own backyard. "Hey, Marcus!" shouted, waving his arms. "Get that thing out of here." The drone didn't budge. If anything, it seemed to hover more aggressively, tilting forward like it was studying him. Marcus felt exposed, violated in a way that made his skin crawl. He'd dealt with plenty of surveillance equipment in his security job, but this felt different, personal, malicious. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911. But before he could speak, the drone suddenly lurched sideways and dove toward the deck. Buddy barked once a sharp, terrified yelp before scrambling toward the sliding door. The drone was heading straight for his dog. Marcus didn't think. 20 years of military training and 15 years of security work kicked in. He lunged for the garden hose, still running from watering the roses, and aimed the high-pressure nozzle skyward. The jet of water caught the drone's left front rotor, sending it spinning wildly off course. "Not my dog, you psycho," Marcus roared, tracking the drone's erratic flight path with the hose. The machine struggled to maintain altitude, its damaged rotor sputtering. Water had clearly gotten into the electronics because sparks began shooting from its undercarriage. With a final mechanical wheeze, it dropped like a stone onto his patio table, shattering the glass top into 1,000 glittering pieces. Buddy cowered behind Marcus's legs as the drone's rotors spun to a stop. In the sudden silence, Marcus could hear his own heart pounding. He approached the wreckage cautiously, hose still in hand. The drone was expensive. That much was obvious. Military-grade components, professional-level camera equipment, and a sleek carbon fiber body that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. But what caught his attention was the small decal on its side, property of K. Morrison, 1247 Maple Street. Karen Morrison, his neighbor, 3 houses down, the woman who'd been making his life hell for the past 6 months. "Son of a bitch," Marcus breathed. He'd suspected Karen was behind the anonymous complaints to the HOA about his excessive holiday decorations and loud lawnmower. But this was surveillance. This was harassment. This was potentially illegal. His phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number, enjoying the show, Marcus. "You have no idea what's coming next." Marcus's hand shook as he read the message. Karen wasn't just spying on him, she was threatening him. But why? What had he done to deserve this level of harassment? He photographed the drone from every angle, then carefully extracted the memory card from its camera. Whatever Karen had been recording, he was going to find out. As he headed inside to examine the footage, another text arrived. "Hope your dog's a good swimmer. Pool party at midnight." K. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Karen lived directly behind the family with the backyard pool of the Hendersons, who were currently on vacation in Europe. If Karen was planning something involving that pool and his dog, but as Marcus slid the memory card into his laptop, what he saw on the screen made him realize that Karen's drone strike wasn't random harassment. The footage showed hours of surveillance, not just of his property, but of every house on the block. Time-stamped videos of neighbors coming and going, children playing in yards, couples arguing through windows. Karen Morrison wasn't just targeting him, she was watching everyone. And judging by the detailed notes overlay on each video file, She was building a database of everyone's vulnerabilities, schedules, and secrets. The last video file was labeled Phase 1 Complete. Initiate Phase 2. Marcus clicked play and watched his own security footage from the past week, apparently hacked from his home system. Karen knew when he left for work, when he walked Buddy, when he was most vulnerable, but the final seconds of the video made his blood freeze. The camera panned to show Karen's own backyard, where she was assembling what looked like a small arsenal of drones at least a dozen of them, lined up like soldiers preparing for war. A new text message appeared on his phone. Phase 2 starts at sunset. Sweet dreams, Marcus. Outside his window, the sun was already touching the horizon. Marcus's military instincts kicked in as he stared at the surveillance footage. Karen Morrison wasn't just some cranky neighbor with a grudge. She was conducting a systematic intelligence operation against the entire neighborhood. The timestamps showed she'd been at this for months, maybe longer. He speed-dialed his old army buddy Jake, who now worked cybersecurity for the feds. Jake, I need a favor. Big one. Can you trace some surveillance equipment and hacked security footage? Marcus Christ. It's been 2 years. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind where someone's been illegally surveilling a whole neighborhood and just threatened my dog. Marcus kept his voice steady, but his hands were shaking. I've got video evidence and a crashed drone with military-grade components. This isn't some HOA Karen losing her mind. Send me everything. Now, while uploading the files, Marcus heard the mechanical worry again. He peered through his blinds and felt his stomach drop. 3 drones this time, approaching from different angles. Karen was escalating buddy wind and pressed against Marcus's legs. The dog's instincts were screaming danger, and Marcus trusted them completely. He grabbed Buddy's leash and his truck keys. Whatever Karen was planning, he wasn't sticking around to find out. But as he opened his front door, he froze. Mrs. Henderson from across the street was standing in her driveway, looking confused and frightened. She was supposed to be in Europe for another week. Marcus, she called out, hurrying toward him. Something's wrong. Our house alarm has been going off all day, but the security company says they can't reach us. We flew back early. The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. Karen had been tracking everyone's schedules. She knew the Hendersons were supposed to be gone. Whatever she'd planned for tonight, it involved their empty house. Mrs. Henderson, you need to get away from your house right now, Marcus said urgently. Don't ask questions, just get in my truck. But I don't understand. The first drone struck the Hendersons' front window like a guided missile. Glass exploded inward as the machine punched through and disappeared into the house. Mrs. Henderson screamed. 2 seconds later, smoke began pouring from the broken window. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed. She's trying to burn down your house. The second and third drones followed the first, each carrying what looked like small incendiary devices. Marcus could see flames already licking at the Hendersons' curtains. Karen hadn't just planned surveillance, she'd planned arson. My husband's still inside. Mrs. Henderson shrieked. He was taking a nap upstairs. Marcus didn't hesitate. He shoved Buddy's leash into Mrs. Henderson's hands and sprinted toward the burning house. Years of emergency response training took over as he kicked down the front door and plunged into the smoke-filled interior. Mr. Henderson, he shouted. Fire! Get out now! The stairs were already thick with smoke, but Marcus could hear coughing from the second floor. He took the steps 3 at a time, his security guard training keeping him low and moving fast. House was filling with toxic fumes from whatever incendiary compound Karen had used. He found Mr. Henderson disoriented in the master bedroom, confused and struggling to breathe. Marcus grabbed the elderly man and half-carried him down the stairs as the fire spread with unnatural speed. Whatever Karen had deployed, it was designed to burn hot and fast. They burst out of the house just as the fire department arrived, sirens wailing. Marcus collapsed on the lawn, gasping for clean air while paramedics checked Mr. Henderson's vitals. But through the chaos, Marcus spotted a figure watching from the tree line behind the Hendersons' backyard. Karen Morrison stood perfectly still, holding what looked like a tablet computer. Even from 50 yards away, Marcus could see she was smiling. Their eyes met across the smoky yard. Karen raised her hand and waved, then held up her tablet so Marcus could see the screen. It showed a live feed from another drone, this one hovering directly over Marcus's own house. where Buddy was tied to Mrs. Henderson's wrist. Both of them standing next to Marcus's truck. Karen tapped her tablet, and Marcus watched in horror as the drone above his dog began to descend. His phone buzzed. Phase 2 complete. Your move, hero. Marcus ran toward his truck, but he was too far away. The drone was dropping fast, and he could see something attached to its undercarriage, another incendiary device, larger than the ones that had just burned down the Henderson house. But as the drone reached 15 feet above Buddy, something unexpected happened. Jake's voice crackled through Marcus's phone speaker. Marcus, I'm in her system. This is bigger than you thought. Karen Morrison doesn't exist, at least. Not the way you know her. Her real name is Catherine Morozov, and she's got federal warrants for domestic terrorism. The drone suddenly jerked sideways and crashed into a tree, its payload exploding harmlessly in the branches. Jake had taken control of Karen's network. She's been using your neighborhood as a testing ground for urban warfare tactics, Jake continued. The FBI's been tracking her for months, but they lost her trail in Chicago. You just found her. Across the yard, Karen Morrison, or Catherine Morozov, had dropped her tablet and was running toward a black sedan parked on the street. But Marcus was already moving. 20 years of training and pure rage driving him forward. He tackled her just as she reached the car door, both of them hitting the asphalt hard. Karen fought like a trained operative, landing several painful blows. Before Marcus managed to pin her down, "You almost killed my dog," he snarled. Karen's response chilled him to the bone. "Your dog was never the target, Marcus. You were just the field test." As FBI vehicles roared into the neighborhood with lights flashing, Marcus realized the terrifying truth. Karen hadn't been trying to destroy his life out of petty neighborly spite. She'd been using him and everyone else on Maple Street as unwitting subjects in a domestic terrorism experiment. And if Jake hadn't intercepted her network when he did, the real attack whatever Karen had been building toward had been unstoppable. FBI Special Agent Sarah Collins had seen her share of domestic terrorism cases, but Catherine Morozov's setup was beyond anything in her experience. The entire basement of the house Karen had been renting was a sophisticated command center filled with drone components, surveillance equipment, and detailed attack plans for what she called Project Neighborhood Watch. She's been perfecting urban psychological warfare tactics, Agent Collins explained to Marcus as they stood in basement laboratory. Your neighborhood was her testing ground. She wanted to see how ordinary people would react to escalating harassment and surveillance before she moved to her real targets. Marcus felt sick looking at the wall of monitors showing live feeds from dozens of locations across the city. Karen had been building a network of surveillance drones, each one capable of carrying various payloads from simple recording equipment to the incendiary devices she'd used on the Henderson house. What were her real targets? Marcus asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. Agent Collins pointed to a detailed map covered in red pins. Federal buildings, schools, shopping centers. She was planning coordinated drone strikes designed to cause maximum chaos and terror. Your neighborhood gave her the data she needed to predict how emergency services would respond, how quickly people would evacuate, how long it would take authorities to track the source. The scope of it was staggering. Karen hadn't just been watching Marcus walk his dog or water his roses. She'd been studying response times, communication patterns, human behavior under stress, every HOA complaint, every late-night noise disturbance, every petty neighborhood conflict had been carefully orchestrated psychological experiments. The federal warrants go back 3 years, Agent Collins continued. Catherine Morozov is part of a domestic terrorism cell that specializes in drone warfare. We've been tracking similar operations in 6 other cities, but this is the first time we've caught one of their operatives in the planning phase. Marcus thought about all the small annoyances over the past months, the complaints about his Christmas lights, the mysterious damage to his mailbox, the feeling that someone was always watching. Karen had been slowly ramping up the psychological pressure, studying how he and his neighbors responded to stress. The scary part, Agent Collins said, is how effective her methods were. Most of your neighbors never reported the harassment because they thought it was just normal neighborhood drama. She was hiding in plain sight. Jake appeared at the top of the basement stairs, laptop in hand. Marcus, you need to see this. I've been going through her digital files. The drone attack on the Henderson house wasn't random, it was the final test. Before she moved to Phase 3, the laptop screen showed a detailed timeline titled Operation Suburban Stress Test. Karen had been meticulously documenting every aspect of neighborhood life for 8 months, building psychological profiles of each resident and identifying their breaking points. She knew exactly when the Hendersons were supposed to return from Europe, Jake explained. The house fire was designed to test emergency response times and see how neighbors would react to a direct attack. She was particularly interested in whether anyone would risk their life to help others. Marcus realized with a chill that his decision to run into the burning house had been exactly what Karen was hoping to document. She'd been studying heroic responses as much as fearful ones, trying to understand how to manipulate both courage and cowardice for maximum psychological impact. But here's the thing that's really disturbing, Jake continued, scrolling through more files. She was specifically targeting you, Marcus. Your military background and security training made you the perfect test subject. She wanted to see if she could break someone with your level of training using nothing but psychological warfare. Agent Collins nodded grimly. We found similar operations in Denver and Atlanta, where they targeted veterans and first responders. They're trying to develop methods to neutralize the people most likely to organize effective resistance during a real attack. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Every moment of frustration, every sleepless night wondering why Karen seemed to hate him so much, every time he'd questioned his own sanity, had all been planned. He'd been a lab rat in someone else's terrorism experiment. But looking around the basement at the seized equipment and arrested operation, Marcus felt something else: pride. Karen might have been studying him, but she'd underestimated him too. When it mattered most, when Buddy and the Hendersons were in danger, he'd responded exactly as his training had taught him. How many other neighborhoods are under surveillance right now? Marcus asked. We're still assessing, Agent Collins replied. But based on what we found here, we think there are active operations in at least 12 other cities. Your case is going to help us identify and stop them. 6 months later, Marcus was testifying before a Senate subcommittee on domestic terrorism, helping lawmakers understand how icily sophisticated psychological warfare operations could hide in plain sight among ordinary neighborhood disputes. The Maple Street Network, as the media had dubbed it, had been completely dismantled. But the investigation had revealed a chilling reality about modern terrorism. The most dangerous attacks weren't always the obvious ones. Sometimes they were the slow, patient operations that studied their targets for months or years, learning weaknesses and building detailed attack plans while masquerading as everyday annoyances. As Marcus walked Buddy through their neighborhood on a quiet Tuesday evening, he reflected on how much had changed. The Hendersons had rebuilt their house and installed state-of-the-art security systems. Several neighbors had adopted rescue dogs after learning how Buddy's instincts had helped detect the drone surveillance. The whole community had grown closer, bonded by the shared experience of surviving. Something they'd never fully understood was happening. Karen Morrison's house stood empty, a for sale sign swaying in the evening breeze. But Marcus knew that somewhere else, in some other quiet suburban neighborhood, another patient predator might be setting up shop, watching and waiting and learning how to turn ordinary people's lives into weapons of terror. The difference now was that people like Marcus knew what to look for, and they were watching back.